Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our Tanya class. We are now in the middle of chapter. We began chapter 18 last time. We took a break last week. I wasn't in town, but we're back. So I'll just give a quick synopsis of what we have discussed in the beginning part of chapter 18. The Alter Rebbe over here begins a new, not new, but a different angle to the to the theme of the Tanya, which is to explain how the matter of Yiddishkeit, of Torah and mitzvahs, is close to a person, very close. Makarev Ma'id is very, very close and accessible in all aspects of the human experience, intellectually, emotionally, and behaviorally. It is Yiddishkeit is not just something. Torah and mitzvahs is not something that is beyond us, and we have to work excessively hard to reach. It is something that we can all access easily. It's very close to us, not just in behavior, but actually emotionally as well. We can love Hashem, we can love Torah mitzvahs. It is something that is right there for us. And in the first 17 chapters, Alter Rebbe explained it in the long way, that basically, and the method was that through contemplation on the greatness of God, one can develop a powerful attraction and love for Hashem, which then, of course, leads one to do all the mitzvahs, because when you love someone, you want to be close to them, and you want to be one with them, and the only way to become one with Hashem is through Torah and mitzvahs. So naturally, when you love Hashem through this deep contemplation and comprehension of the greatness of God, you will get to love Him, and that will lead you to do His bidding, to do what He asks of you, which is the way you connect with Him. Chapter 18 through 25, the next 8 chapters, he discusses the short way, the other way, to explain how God is very, very near to us. And he refers us to here to the natural love that is within every single Jew. By definition of the fact that every one of us has a neshama, a soul, we have an inborn love for Hashem, which is sometimes concealed. True, we have to reveal it, but we don't have to create it. We don't have to make it. We have it, we just have to reveal it, and that's the world of a difference. Something you have to you have to create and make happen for you, through your own contemplation, through your own comprehension, through developing a powerful knowledge of God, which creates a love for Hashem, is a very long process. When you have to just reveal it, that's much, much easier. So that's the short way, the one that's much easier to access, because all you have to do is reveal it. But in the next 8 chapters, the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss what is the nature of this love. In the next 2 chapters, he's going to talk about the nature of this love, where it comes from, and how did we get it, how has it become an innate love in every single one of us, and every Jew, and how it functions in us, and how that leads us to be completely committed to Torah and mitzvahs. So for the benefit of those that weren't here last time, and even for those that were here last time, maybe I'm going to read from the beginning of the chapter again. We'll do it a little quicker this time, but we'll get a refresher and then we'll move on. All right? Is that okay? Mm-hmm. And we're going to refer to this paper that I gave out a little, in the chapter. What?
One more?
You need one more? Sure.
Thank you.
And of course I will show it on the video as well when we get there. To explain, we're on page 75 in the bilingual edition of Tanya, chapter 18. To explain more adequately and more precisely the word very in the verse, but the thing is very nigh unto thee. Moshe says the matter of Torah and mitzvahs is very near to you. Nigh means near. So Alter Rebbe over here says he wants to elucidate more, to adequately and precisely explain the word very. What does it mean it's very near to us? It should be recognized with certainty that even the person whose understanding in the knowledge of God is limited and who has no heart to comprehend the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof, to produce therefrom awe and love of God, even in his mind and understanding alone. The Alter Rebbe in the first 17 chapters based the idea that you can create a love in your heart, or at least in your mind, to, as we said in chapter 16 and 17, which we won't get into now in detail. Those of you who were here remember that probably. But the idea is that you can create a love in your mind through comprehension, through delving into the greatness of God. What happens if someone doesn't have the capacity to do that? Is he left out of it? Moshe is talking to all Jews, not just to the scholarly, and those that have the full understanding and they can comprehend godliness. So what does a person that is an ignoramus do? Or even if he's not an ignoramus, but he doesn't have the intellectual capacity. Not everyone has it. So he too, he says, however, it is a very near thing for him to observe and practice all the commandments of the Torah and the study of the Torah, which counterbalances them all. He too can fulfill all the mitzvahs very near to him. In his very mouth and heart, he can have an emotional attachment to it, from the depth of his heart, in true sincerity, with fear and love. Namely, the hidden love, what is it? Here he introduces the idea. This is the hidden love that is in the heart of all Jews, which is an inheritance to us from our patriarchs. So Alter Rebbe introduces here, as we discussed last time, that every one of us has a love innate in our heart. We inherited it from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's where we got it from. Okay, so you have the love. You don't have to create it. So someone that doesn't have the capacity to create a love in his heart has it anyway. He has it before he has to create it. Good morning.
Good morning.
However, we must first of all preface a clear and precise explanation of the origin and essence of this love, how it became our inheritance, and how awe is also incorporated in it. So he says we need to do 4 things over here, and I discussed this last time. We have to first understand the origin of this love. What is the essence of this love? What kind of love is this? How it became our inheritance. And how is awe included in this? Because Alter Rebbe said before that we have the ability to, in true sincerity, with fear and love, both fear and love. This is an innate love that we have. How is fear included in it? So those are the 4 things that the Alter Rebbe is now going to discuss to understand what is this love, where it comes from, what is its essence, and how it functions. The explanation is as follows. The patriarchs verily constituted... the question over here about the inheritance from our patriarchs is a quite obvious one. You can inherit genes, you can inherit money, you can, you can do all those things, but how do you inherit love? Love is something. If my father loved cheesecake, it doesn't mean that I'm going to love cheesecake. Incidentally, I love cheesecake. My father doesn't, but that's the... But maybe he does, but it's not one of his passions in life. But a parent doesn't bequeath feelings. Come over.
I like it here.
A father bequeaths those certain things to their children, a mother, but not feelings. I mean, that's obvious. We don't because my mother and father loved something or someone. By no means does that mean I'm going to love that thing or person. So over here he's saying we inherited the love from our father, from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. How does that work? So he explains. The patriarchs verily constituted a chariot, and therefore they merited the blessing of transmitting to their descendants, every single Jew, coming after them forever, a nefesh, ruach, and neshama, from the 10 holy sfirot of the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah, to each according to his station and according to his works. What he's basically saying over here is, that let's first explain what is a chariot. A chariot is like a vehicle, right? A vehicle is there to serve you, right? And I explained last time that when you come and get into your car in the morning, it's not as if the car would like to go left, and because you're telling it to go right, it turns right to submit its will to your will. A vehicle doesn't have a will of its own. Its whole existence is to serve the rider. It only has one function. It doesn't have a will, and it's submitting its will to the rider. It doesn't have a will of its own. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov became the chariot, the vehicle for God. Their will became the will of God. They became one with Hashem. Their very identity became godliness. That's what happened. That's how elevated a state of spirituality and holiness they were. Because of that, they merited to bequeath, not to bequeath, but he says of it, to transmit. Therefore, they merited the blessing of transmitting to their descendants. Every single one of their descendants will now get a neshama, a part of Hashem, which is the neshama, from the world, from the, as he calls, coming after them, a nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Those are the three parts of the soul, from the 10 holy spheres of the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, to each according to his station and according to his works. I'm going to read another few, some Kabbalistic words over here, which I will explain. That's what I gave out this piece of paper over here before, and I will, of course, show it on the video as well. But let me read another few words for you. Even the most worthless of worthless men and the sinners of Israel are thus endowed at the time of marital union of their parents with, at any rate, a nefesh, the nefesh of Malchus Da'asiyah, royalty in the world of action, which is the lowest grade of holiness in the world of Asiyah. Nevertheless, since the latter is of the 10 holy sfirot, it is compounded of them all, including Chachma Asiyah, wisdom of the world of action, which is the lowest world, wherein is clothed Chachma de Malchus Datzilus, wisdom of royalty in the highest world of emanation, incorporating Chachma of Atzilus, wisdom of the world of emanation, which is the highest level, which is illuminated by the light of the blessed Ein Sof, God himself, as is written, the Lord has founded the earth with wisdom, and in wisdom thou made them all. Thus it comes to pass that the blessed Ein Sof is garbed, as it were, in the wisdom of the human soul, as of whatever sort of Jew he may be. Let me unpack this.
Translate.
Yeah. Of course. All right. I'm going to refer to this page. Let me give a little bit of an explanation of what's going on over here. Kabbalah tells us that when God created the world, in order that the world should become, as he wished, a physical world, ex nihilo, something from absolute nothingness, he underwent a process of tzimtzum, which means contraction. He contracted his infinite light, concealed it, and allowed for lower spiritual realities to emerge and to come into existence, which then were again also contracted, and it began a flow or a devolution, an evolution or devolution of spiritual worlds following from one to the next, which the lower one has less of the spiritual or godly infinite light within it, and it takes on new categories, new more corporeality, and so on, until it reaches the physical, and it can even create a physical reality. And basically, the Kabbalah explains that Hashem, this Seder Hishtalshelus, this order of evolution of the worlds, of one level to the next, is made up of 4 worlds, basically 4 worlds. They are Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. Atzilus being the highest, that then creates Bria, the next world, which is of course on a much lower level than Atzilus. Bria then metamorphosizes and creates Yitzira, the next world of formation, until Asiya, which is the world of action, and then comes the physical world. Very simply put, in each world there are 10 spheres, 10 holy attributes.
The first 4 worlds.
4 worlds, and in each world there are 10 attributes.
So it's 40.
And the 10 attributes are on this page.
Which world are we?
For those of you who are watching online, this is the 10 spheres. And in fact, I'm not going to keep it up a whole time, but you'll have to rely on my oral explanation for those that are not here. Leave Keter out. Okay? The top one, as you see, is Keter. Leave that out. Because if you count it, this is 11. This is not included.
In each of the 4 worlds are the same exact level.
Same 10 spheros, yeah. What are these 10 spheros? The 10 spheres God created, emanated of himself 10 character traits. 10 manifestations, 10 character traits through which he created the world. Because you have to remember, from the absolute infinite light of Hashem cannot come a purely physical limited world. It had to undergo a certain evolution of sorts, where it becomes less, till it even has the ability to become physical and very limited in scope. And the process is the 10 spheres of Atzilus. And these 10 spheres are very, very known and very paramount in all works of Kabbalah. They're all over there. It's the basis for a lot of the explanation of the spiritual world. These 10 spheres are incorporated. They are incorporated one in the meaning. They're not separate. You have it? Mm-hmm. The 10 spheres are integrated one with the other. What that means is, this is very important, okay? So I'm going to hold this up again. You have Chochmah, you see these lines. This is the integration, meaning in Chochmah alone you have all 10.
Can you say it in English? Because I don't understand.
The Chochmah is wisdom.
Okay.
Bina is understanding. Das is knowledge.
We're right with that.
Sure.
Okay? Chochmah is understanding, Bina is understanding, Das is knowledge. Those 3 are the intellectual sphirot. Then comes 6.
Chochmah is wisdom.
Chochmah is wisdom, Bina understanding, Das is knowledge. I'm not going to translate every one of these. It's not important for this discussion. Chesed through Yesod are the 6 emotional attributes. Love, fear, and so on and so forth. Every one of these 10 sfirot are intertwined with all other 10. Within Chochmah there's Bina of Chochmah, Das of Chochmah, Chesed within Chochmah, Gvura within Chochmah, which really means you have 100. 10 times 10. Because there's a full integration and one is integrated with the other. Okay? Malchus. What happened?
Sorry.
So you come in late, look what you do.
On what page are we on?
Linda,
75.
Hold on.
you.
Sorry about
Bottom of
that.
75.
Yeah, shut it off. Let's go live again.
Sure. I'm going to disrupt the
I'm
class.
sorry.
Can't take you anywhere. That's an old story.
All right, I'm sorry about that. We got cut off for a second. We're back on. A bunch of people watching, so. Now, Malchus is the sphere, the 10th lowest, through which all the energy of these spheres flow through Malchus, serving as a conduit. That then, once they all flow through Malchus and contracted in Malchus, it becomes lessened in its spiritual energy, and that brings about the next world, starts the next world of Bria. You understand? The same process all over again. Okay? What he's saying over here is, every single neshama we have inherited from our parents, from our grandparents, from our ancestors, meaning the patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, a holy neshama, a soul, that comes from these 10 spheres. This is the place where the neshamas come from the world of Atzilus. All neshamas begin in Chochmah of Atzilus. You follow me? That's the origin of every single soul. And the patriarchs, because of their complete dedicated divine service to Hashem, merited to bequeath, to transmit to every one of their descendants this special, unique soul that comes from Chochmah of Atzilus. However, from Chochmah of Atzilus, it then travels down till it reaches the body of the Jew. It goes through a process of what I would call a spiritual pregnancy. Okay? What does a pregnancy do? A physical pregnancy.
It's a process.
It's a process. It takes the substance that the mother received from the father and dissects it over 9 months, and that seminal drop that was there in its purest state is now dissected, and certain parts of it become the brain, certain parts of it become the eyeballs, certain parts of it become the feet, certain parts of it become the toenails, and certain parts of the heart, and the whole body is then brought into existence through that 9 months gestation of that seminal drop, and it becomes metamorphosized more and more and more, lower till it becomes even toenails. Hold on a second. But where's every single part of that child's body sourced?
The brain.
In every part of the body can be sourced in that drop. It all comes from that drop, which that drop comes from the father's brain, originally. Okay. The same thing happened now. So why did this become a toenail, and that became a heart, and that became a brain? And the brain, of course, is the highest part of the child's existence. Because the brain part didn't become so affected by the gestation, and it maintained a higher level of the father's drop. Whereas the toenail was much more affected by the gestation, and it became lesser and further from its origin. But it's still connected to its origin. All traces back to that. The neshamas go through the same process, spiritually speaking. We all begin in Hashem's Chochmah of Atzilus, Hashem's brain, which is Chochmah of Atzilus, of the highest world. But then the neshama begins to travel downward till it reaches our body. And it goes through the 4 worlds. It goes through this process, through Malchus to the next world. Right? And when Malchus of Bria, it goes through Malchus of Bria to the next world of Malchus of Yetzirah, and so on and so forth. Certain neshamas, the neshama of Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, of Moses, even when his neshama was in his body, it was on a very high spiritual level. Why is that? His neshama was considered a neshama of Atzilus. Even though it went through all the different levels, it went through Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, till it reached his body. But it was not affected by this descent. It came down through these levels like a funnel. It was funneled down through these levels. It was untouched. And therefore, as the neshama reached his body, it still maintained this pure state of Chochmah Atzilus. You follow what I'm saying? Just like the brain of the child. It was almost unaffected by this 9 months. It remained in its highest level. And that's why it remained a brain, with full of energy. Mevin?
Like the waterfall sample that you gave us lessons ago. The same drop of water that goes down.
Exactly, so it comes down.
Same thing.
Yeah. That's by Torah. That's by Torah. I make the distinction between the neshamas. But you're right, by Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, those neshamas, their neshamas were very, very affected very little by this descent. But then you have neshamas that were affected a little more. And they're considered neshamas of Bria. What does Bria mean? The next world. It went down to the world of Bria, and that's where their neshamas were affected, and that's why it's considered a neshama of Bria. But as it went from Bria down to through the next two worlds, it wasn't affected at all. That's why it maintained the Bria state of spiritual energy. It lost the Atzilus state, it didn't lose it, but it was more affected. What shines by those neshamas is the world of Bria more. Just like the heart, okay? The heart is still not a toenail. It's still on a high level within the sun's organs. The heart is on a higher level than most of the others. It's not a brain, but it's still a heart. It's still on a higher level organ. What does that mean? The heart was more affected than the brain, but not as much as the toenail. That's why it's remained the heart, and that's not, and then the toenail left became much less. Now the 600, all the neshamas of the Jewish people go through this process of gestation, so to say, of this evolution. Many neshamas are affected greatly, many neshamas are affected less. And that's the different grades of neshamas. There's so many different levels of neshamas. So, even though we all come from one God. How did we become so, how are we on different levels? How are these neshamas on different levels? It's because of this evolution process, this pregnancy, this spiritual pregnancy. So when it gets to your body, it could be, let's say this is the lowest of the four worlds, Asiya. So what you have over here is, in Asiya itself, you have the 10 spheres. So you have Malchus of Asiya. And within Malchus alone, you have 10 spheres. We said each one has all 10. It's integrated. So within Malchus, you have Chochmah of Malchus, and then Malchus of Malchus. So you have Malchus of Asiya, which is the lowest level of the spiritual chain. Many neshamas of our generation are from that level.
So somebody who's wicked could blame it because my neshama...
Can't blame it. You can't blame it. It's not a blame. In other words, wicked, no one is wicked because the lower level neshamas doesn't turn you into a wicked person. It means that you can't be on a higher level of spirituality like a tzaddik. And no one asks you. That's not what God wants from you.
If you come from a wicked father or your grandfather...
It makes it harder. You're right. That's true. You are very right. If you come from wicked...
Generational punishment too, Rabbi.
This is true. If you come from wicked parents, the parents should know that they're making their life of their children much, much more difficult to do its mission on earth. There's no question about that. But no child can ever blame his parents ultimately for his bad actions, because your bad actions are yours. You chose to do them, and you could have risen above your surroundings, above your environment. But it is much harder. There's no question about it. That's why parents should be giving that's our responsibility, to create an environment that is holy for our children.
Neshama can be possible. I mean, you can scale on the level.
What's that?
Once you get your neshama,
yeah,
you can rise in the levels of...
No, you can't. Your neshama is your neshama. We learned in chapter 2 of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe makes a distinction. We have two souls. We have the human soul and the godly soul. It says in the Zohar that when parents conduct themselves in a holy way during their marital union, when they create that child, they can affect the holiness of their child. So the Alter Rebbe explained over there, that's only true with the second soul, with the first soul, the human soul. Because you have to remember, the godly soul, I'm getting off topic a little bit, but you ask, so I'll answer this, it's important. The godly soul functions in your body through the human soul. The human soul is what animates and makes your body alive. What's the difference between a person that's alive and a person that's dead? The living person has the human soul still connected to the body, and the person who's died the soul has departed. That's it. He doesn't have a human soul animating his body anymore. Okay? So the neshama has to enclose itself in the human soul to function together in that body. So in the body there's both these souls. So the human soul serves as a garment for the godly soul. Okay? That garment, you can draw a holier garment for your children if you conduct yourself in a holier way. But the soul itself, only God chooses what kind of soul will go down to a child. It's not up to the parents. This garment is, the human soul is. So if you have holier parents, your human soul will be on a more refined level, and the soul will then be, the neshama will then be able to function in the body, be more of a greater influence on the soul, on the human, on that child. If you draw down for your children a more coarse garment, the neshama has a harder job influencing the body to do the right thing, to be directed towards spiritual ends. But ultimately, you can never say, I'm doomed. Because everyone, we all have a neshama, and that neshama, if we want, we can make it have an influence on our body to do the right thing and live a spiritual life. But you're right.
You not inherit the iniquity of your parents up to the third generation?
You say that again? You not what?
You refer to Exodus 34, verse 7. Let's go into Exodus 6. Exodus 34, 6. I'm very confused there because it says the law is proclaimed as for God for 1,000 generations. But the iniquity of the children, it says up to the third generation. Rabbi, and I'm very
Iniquity.
And it will not be cleansed. If you inherit the iniquity of your parents.
You don't inherit the iniquity of your parents. I know the verse. You don't have to show it to me. I know exactly what verse you're talking about.
So
what he's saying is you have an influence on your children for generations. Your iniquities. No. The good, on the good side is 1,000. On the negative side is 4 generations. That means if a parent, but that's only if the children follow in those footsteps. In other words, if a parent does a terrible sin, and the children do the same terrible sin, they're not only going to get punished for their own sin, they're also going to get punished a little bit for the sins of their fathers, up to 4 generations. But if the child is a good child, and he does not follow the ways of the parents, he's not going to be punished for his parents' sins, of course not. It's only if you're following in those footsteps, and so you get punished also for your parents' sins, up to 4 generations. And same thing the other side. Not the same thing. You get rewarded for your parents' merits up to 1,000 generations. Okay, but that's a separate thing. But that's nothing to do with what you're doing. Your doing is your choice. If you choose to be like a rotten person, like your parents, if they're rotten, you will pay the price for that double. But if you don't choose to be rotten, you choose to be a good person, you're not going to have any effect of your parents' bad ways. So that's the bottom line. Anyway, getting back to this.
When you pass on, does your godly soul take the same route back up?
When you pass away, probably. It could be. I'm not sure. It would make sense. But either way, the effect, that's what we're talking about. So no matter who you are, what kind of Jew you are, you have a soul from the world, from one of these 10 spheres, of one of these 4 worlds. But you have to understand that even if your soul is the lowest level soul, which means it comes from the world of Asiya, of not only of the world of Asiya, Chochmah, the highest level of Asiya, but you come from the lowest level of Asiya, Malchus, and within Malchus alone, not the highest level within Malchus, because Malchus also has all 10. It's Malchus of Malchus, the lowest of the lowest level of the lowest world. Imagine that. You got stuck with that lowest level soul. You should know, the Alter Rebbe is going to say over here, and we'll read it again, that in the Malchus of Malchus, the Asiya, shines the Chochmah of Malchus of Asiya. In that Chochmah shines Chochmah of Asiya. In this Chochmah shines Chochmah of Atzilus, all the way up. So in a sense, the Chochmah of Atzilus permeates every single level soul, just like in the child of a person, a physical child. In the toenails is the brain. The brain is giving life to the toenail, and the child's brain is, of course, certainly connected to the father's brain. So you can see how this process works. So every single one of us has a neshama kadesha, a holy soul. True, some of us are more affected by this descent, and some of us come from Malchus of Asiyah, some of us of Malchus the Bria, some of Yitzira, some of Atzilus, some of Chochmah Atzilus.
Even
But
a
no matter who you are,
A bastard?
yeah,
You can
100%.
change it? 'Cause you mentioned
You
a
can't
bastard.
change the fact that you're a bastard, but the bastard has nothing to do with your neshama. It's an illegitimate child, but if it's from a Jewish mother, he's a descendant of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, he gets a neshama. So that's what he's saying over here. Shall we read this again? Let's read it again. I think it'll be a little easier to understand this. The explanation is as follows, by the triangle on the left column. The patriarchs verily constituted the chariot, and therefore they merited the blessing of transmitting to their descendants coming after them forever. A nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Now, within each soul, there's these three levels. What are these three levels? I didn't mention it here, but there's three levels. They are the intellectual capacity of the soul, which is called neshama, the emotional capacity of the soul, which is called ruach, and the action capacity of the soul, which is called nefesh. So each one of these, he said, so they merited the blessing of transmitting to their descendants, coming after them forever, a nefesh, ruach, and neshama, from the 10 holy spheres of the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bri, Yitzira, and Asiyah. To each according to his station. In other words, we're talking about the station means where your soul actually comes from within that hierarchy. Some come from Atzilus, some from Bria. They all originate in Atzilus, or Chochmah of Atzilus. But the question now is, your station means where were you affected? In the descent, how much were you affected? Some were affected less, some more. No matter what, you still have the neshama. Even the most worthless, and that's what he's saying now, even the most worthless of worthless men. And the sinners of Israel are thus endowed at the time of marital union at any rate a nefesh, the nefesh of Malchus Asiyah. No matter who the lowest of the lowest, you still have a nefesh of Malchus Asiyah. Royalty in the world of action, which is the lowest grade of holiness in the world of Asiyah. Nevertheless, since the latter, this Malchus of Asiyah, is of the 10 holy spheres, it is compounded of all of them. In it has Chochmah, it has all the levels, including Chochmah Asiyah, Chochmah of the world of action. Wherein, in Chochmah of the world of action, is clothed Chochmah of Malchus of Atzilus. Because if let's say this is the world of Atzilus, right? So you have Malchus is the lowest world of level of Atzilus. In Malchus you have the 10 spheres itself, Chochmah of Malchus of Atzilus, because everything flows through Malchus. And in that Chochmah of Malchus of Atzilus is Chochmah of Atzilus. So you see how that works. Wherein is clothed the Chochmah, the Malchus, the Atzilus, wisdom of royalty. In the world of emanation, the highest world, incorporating Chochmah of Atzilus, wisdom of the world of emanation, which is illuminated. Now in Chochmah, now this is key, in the highest world, the highest sphere of the highest world of Atzilus, that's where, which is illuminated by the light of the blessed Ein Sof. God himself, the infinite light of God, is present and shines in the highest level of the 10 spheres, which is Chochmah of Atzilus. That is the vessel. Chochmah of Atzilus is the vessel for God's infinite light. We'll see soon why that is. And because of that, since Chochmah of Atzilus penetrates all the 10 spheres of all the 4 worlds, everyone has within him the infinite light of Hashem through Chochmah of Atzilus.
Now we're going through these stages. Does the soul stay?
Hold on one
longer than
second.
any
Well,
other
let me
person?
just finish this a second. Which is illuminated by the light of the blessed Ein Sof itself. As is written, the Lord has founded the earth meaning over here Asiyah, the lowest world, with wisdom. It all comes from Chochmah. Because Chochmah has within it the infinite light of God. And who created everything? The infinite God. So that's what he's saying. And he gives another verse. In wisdom hast thou made them all. Well, through Chochmah you made everything. Because Chochmah is the seat or the vessel where the infinite light of Hashem shines, and everything comes from the infinite God, of course. Thus it comes to pass that the blessed Ein Sof is garbed, as it were, in the wisdom of the human soul. In our Chochmah of every soul. Every soul has all these 10 faculties, of whatever sort of Jew he may be. In turn, The soul's faculty of wisdom, together with the light of the blessed Ein Sof that is vested in it, spreads throughout the entire soul, animating it from head to foot, so to speak. As is written, wisdom gives life to them that have it. So through the Chochmah, it penetrates and animates your entire soul. So the infinite light of Hashem that's present in Chochmah animates your entire soul. So your whole soul is one with Hashem. Is literally a part of Hashem. At times, and here comes a very interesting parenthesis. This is very, very interesting, what he's going to say now. On page 77. At times, sinners of Israel, parents who are sinners, may even bring down very lofty souls, which had been in the depth of the klipot, as is explained in the Sefer HaGilgulim. Klipos is the unholy side, the place where all negativity stems from. There's holy and there's klipa, which is the unholy. Those are the two sides of reality. You're either holy or you're unholy. You're either in the world of kedusha or in the world of klipa. Now within klipa alone, there's different levels. We learned there's klipas noiga, the translucent klipa, and the totally unholy klipas, which we learned already in chapter 1, chapter 7, 6. But for now, we'll leave it to two realms, klipa and kedusha. What he's saying over here, at times, read this again, sinners of Israel may even bring down to their children, they may draw down very lofty souls from the Chochmah Vatzilus that have within them the highest level of kedusha, of holiness. And those souls were in the depth of the klipas. What's going on over here? Let me explain this. What he's saying over here is as follows. Let's talk about these two realms. Why did God create the world? God created the world where there's a balance between good and evil, so that all of us should be able to choose between good and evil and create a dwelling place, a home for God through our own effort. If we didn't have choice, there was only holiness in this world, we'd be like robots. There's nothing else to do. So you're doing the right thing. That's not an accomplishment. The accomplishment is when you're able to say no to God and you say yes, that's an accomplishment. When you have choice between good and evil, and you chose to do the right thing, good, that Hashem loves. Okay? So in order for that process to happen, he needs to have not only good in this world, he has to create unholiness in this world. In order to have a balance, you have to have good and bad. So he created a realm called Klipa. Klipa means the shell, it covers over godliness. It's the antithesis of godliness. He created such a realm because he wants to have good and evil in this world so we can choose between them. Okay? That makes sense? How do these two realms exist? Nothing can exist outside of God. The source of all life is from God himself, from holiness. The source of everything can only exist if it's connected to a source of life. What's the source of life? Hashem. So even the unholy realm has to have some kind of connection to the Hashem or to holiness, which is the place where life, godly life forces, godly energy and life forces is present. So the klippas have to have some hold on some source of life. Otherwise it doesn't exist anymore. So what does Hashem do? He releases to them certain sources of life, of holy life, where they can nurture from it so they can keep in existence, remain in existence. Okay? What is a major source of godly life force? A neshama. A holy soul is like a fountain of godly life force. So what does Hashem do? He sometimes releases into the realm of klipa very lofty souls, but they have a hold on it so that they can nurture from that godly life-giving source, so that they can remain in existence. Now, will these klippas ever release those souls down to earth? Never in a million years. Why? Because if those souls come down to earth, and they live a holy life, because they're lofty souls, they'll live holy lives over here, they'll bring Mashiach, and that's the end of klippa. They're not looking for that. They want to nurture from those sources of life. But here's the interesting thing about this. A soul in heaven, it's still a holy soul. Even if it's in the realm of klippa. So they have a hold on it, but they haven't really captured it. When does this soul become really the domain of klippa? When could they say, they feel, we have captured this soul forever, and now we can live off of it for forever and ever? When they release that soul into this world, and that soul is enclosed in a body of a Rosha, of a wicked, evil person, that person is sinning day and night, basically living what Klippa wants it to do, right? With that realm of evil. In that person, there's this incredible source of godly life force, that lofty soul. So when that neshama is living on earth and doing bad deeds, living like an evil, wicked person, a sinful person, that's a smorgasbord for Klippa. There's nothing greater for Klippa than that. Because it has an unbelievable amount of godly energy, but it'll never be redeemed because it's in the body of a person who's very sinful. That's the best of both worlds for Klippa. So Klippa sometimes will release God put into their domain these lofty souls to give them a great source of life so that they can exist. But they don't want to release those souls down to earth, because then they're afraid that soul will start living a holy life down here on earth. And when it lives a holy life, they're gone. It's out of their hands, and it leaves their domain. So if they can guarantee that soul will be enclosed in a body of a human being, of a Jew, that will be sinful, they love that. That's what they want. So what do? They sometimes look for a set of parents that are very coarse, not good people. Very coarse, very unholy. When they they say, you know what, let's release this soul to their child. Mm-hmm. That house is a not good house. That child will grow up to be a sinner. We have him for 120 years. That's great. It's in our domain for 120 years. It's a smorgasbord. It's like a party for Klippa. So they do that sometimes. So sometimes very sinful parents will bring down to this world lofty souls for their children, because Klippa will release it to them. You have to understand, Klippa lives off holiness. There's no other source for them. There's no other source of life for them other than godliness, which is holiness. So God gives them that opportunity to have some holiness on their side, but they will hold on to it, not release it into this world, if they think that neshama is going to turn into a tzaddik. But if they're guaranteed that the neshama will turn into a sinful person, that to them is the best situation. A very lofty soul, which means tremendous godly energy, which for them is an incredible life source of life, of godly life force, which keeps them in existence with more vigor. And it's in their hands for 120 years, because it's released to a family who's very sinful and very unholy. So that child will probably grow up to be very unholy and very bad. Which, by the way, is a very interesting thing that we find. Yesterday's Torah portion, this will give us an interesting explanation of something very bizarre we find in the Torah. I think I mentioned this to you when we were learning the second chapter of Tanya. We learned in yesterday's parsha that Lot had intimate relations with his daughters.
Yes.
That was the story that we read yesterday, right? You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Terrible thing. Terrible thing. What comes? That's incest.
Incest.
That's incest. And what kind of child can come from that? Only the worst. That's terrible. Well, what's interesting is that he had relations with both of his daughters, and they both became pregnant and gave birth to a son. One gave birth to Moav and one to Ammon. the two nations later that became Moabites and the Ammonites, come from Lot, from those ancestral incest relations. You know what's interesting? Who comes from Moab? Ruth. Ruth comes from Moab. And who's Ruth's grandson, great-grandson? King David. Who's King David? From him comes Mashiach. Could you imagine? The soul of Mashiach originates in Lot's incest relationship with his daughter. This is crazy. Could you imagine? The holiest soul of the world ever, Mashiach himself, comes from such a negative and unholy union. Let's go a few portions. Let's go 3 weeks from now. We're going to learn in the Pasha Vayeshev something, again, a very interesting story. Judah has relationship with his daughter-in-law, Tamar.
Right.
Judah and Tamar. You remember the biblical story of Judah and Tamar?
Yes.
Who comes from them? Peretz.
Right.
2 sons. He gave birth to twins. She gave birth to twins from that relationship. The twins were Zerach and Peretz. Yeah? Who's Peretz? Again, Peretz comes comes the soul of Mashiach later on. In the L'Chadodi, what do we say? Yom in the Smel Tifreitzi, Ves Hashem Taritz, Al Yad Ish Ben Parzi. We are asking Hashem to finally bring the son of Peretz, Mashiach. Mashiach comes from Peretz. My goodness, Mashiach comes from every wrong relationship. It's terrible.
Oh, no, why?
And David himself, King David with Bathsheba. From that also produced, the story of David and Bathsheba.
Sure.
David and Bathsheba, he took the wife of Uriah, and wasn't that really the nicest situation in the world, right? And from that comes again eventually the Neshama of Mashiach. Mashiach comes from all the wrong relationships.
Well,
Why is
maybe
that?
he needs a balance.
Why is that?
I believe in
I'm finished with this. What is the meaning of this?
The balance
You know why that
good
is?
and
It relates
bad.
to what we just read. The Neshama of Mashiach, Klippa is going to put up the greatest fight not to release the Neshama of Mashiach into this world. They will never let Mashiach's soul come down. Because the Mashiach's soul is the greatest soul. So on the one hand, they want to nurture of that soul if it's in their domain. But they would love if Mashiach's soul could be in their domain. But they're going to put up a heck of a fight not to make sure the Mashiach's soul doesn't come down here and Mashiach will come. Because that's the end of Tumah. That's the end of unholiness. That's when Mashiach comes, the world becomes a good world only of good. However, when they see these really crazy relationships going on, Lot and his daughter, they say, you know what, let's release that neshama. Let's release Mashiach's neshama there, because now this is a bad relationship. That's going to be stuck in the world of unholiness for the next 120 years. On the one hand, we have, it's the holiest soul, but it's it's stuck in the domain of Klippa. Right? That for them is the best. So they'll release Mashiach's neshama in the most bizarre relationships. And that's why, in a way, the only way Mashiach's neshama can come down to earth is in such bizarre relationships. Because otherwise, Klippa will put a fight like they never did before to make sure that the neshama of Mashiach doesn't come down. They'll stop it.
Why would they be in that?
They have that say.
Anyway? They have this.
Yeah, because
Hashem will not put it directly down with that.
no, because Klippa won't let. They'll put up a fight, and that's how it works.
But wouldn't this be true of any tzaddik?
Yes, it is true of any tzaddik. Not any tzaddik. Not any tzaddik. No. Not every soul did Hashem put in the realm of Klippa to begin with. They have a say on their soul that God puts into their realm. Apparently, the neshama Mashiach, which is the greatest neshama, has a certain. God gives them a little bit to nurture of that neshama. So they're not going to let that neshama down unless it goes down in a really crazy type of relationship where they believe that will not produce their ultimate Mashiach. It will remain in a sinful body, in a sinful life, which means for them, a shmol is word of godly energy without any.
So it will be a transformation. You said prior, it will be a transformation from negative to
When
positive.
Mashiach comes. Yeah, but for that, the Mashiach's neshama has to be in a body here on earth, and he has to be a holy person and reveal himself as Mashiach. But if they can guarantee that soul will end up in the body of someone who is unholy, So this unholy person roaming around with a spark of Mashiach's neshama, for Klippa, that's the best situation. Because he's not going to reveal himself as Mashiach, as a sinful person, but he's down here on earth doing sinful deeds, which gives an unbelievable amount of godly energy to the Klippa. That to them is the best. So they will let it come down in these bizarre relationships. Which, by the way, the Gemara says that anyone that says that David HaMelech did a sin with Bathsheba is making a mistake. Because technically he didn't do any sin. He didn't. She was divorced at the time. Because all of King David's soldiers had to divorce before they went to the front lines. Just in case they get lost in action, their wife shouldn't remain aguna, someone with that can never get married again. So he demanded every soldier to give a divorce to his wife. So technically Uriah was divorced at the time. So she was not a woman, a married woman. She was not. There was no prohibition from that sense. The only problem is it's a little bit, creepy, the whole story, right? He took a wife on a rooftop. No, that was afterwards.
Probably the creepiest part was sending Uriah to the front line.
Yeah, that's
That was afterwards, but that was afterwards.
That was the most evil.
No, but that wasn't, because he was guilty of treason. He was guilty of not listening to the king, which is the death penalty automatically, as you know. That's another halacha. See, he did nothing technically wrong, but it looks so morally so backwards. You know why that is? David was a holy person. David wrote the Tehillim. David is not, I don't want to use names, but you can go into the newspapers and see who's the latest on the front lines of people that are sexual predators. He's not that type of person. David is a melech. David HaMelech speaks to God. He's a holy soul of the highest level. David HaMelech knew a thing or two about Klippa and Kedusha and the holy realms of heaven. He knew that the Neshama Mashiach will never come down here in a straightforward path. He concocted this whole thing to fool Klippa. He takes a woman off a rooftop with the intention of having a union with her that will bring down the Neshama of Mashiach. But he knows that in this maybe Klippa will release it, because it's a bizarre relationship. So maybe they'll say, this is a good place to release it, so it's an unholiness, so for us it's great. He knows what he's doing. It looks immoral to the eye who doesn't know what's going on. But David HaMelech, whose soul was in heaven and had a full, great picture of what goes on in heaven, knew that the time of the Neshama of Mashiach has to start coming down through him. But through his normal union, the Klippa would never release it. So he has to find a certain way to get Klippa to release that Neshama. So he does it through Bathsheba, which looks unholy, so Klippa can think, this is a place to release it, because that child will definitely not be, it's an illegitimate child, he'll never want to be holy. So it'll be in Klippa's hands for who knows how long, for another 120 years. David's holiness led him to that act. Because he knew that that's the only way he can get Mashiach's Neshama down there. The same thing with Lot. The same thing with Yehuda. They're not bad people. I don't know about Lot, but Yehuda for sure not. Yehuda was a tzaddik. Yehuda had the neshama of Atzilus. He's going to go have relations with his daughter-in-law. So technically it wasn't a prohibition either, because she was not married anymore at the time. But it looked very unholy. She was a prostitute. She looked like she dressed up as a harlot. The whole thing doesn't look right for a tzaddik like Yehuda. Because he's a tzaddik. And he knows that he's the one that has to bring down the neshama of Mashiach. He knew that this is the only way to do it. That's the only way Klippa will release that neshama. So he does it. Technically, it's not sinful, but it looks a little bit unholy. He can live with it.
So what they did to the brother, it was for the Messiah to come as
Which
well.
brother? Joseph.
Joseph.
That's maybe, I don't know, but
They were all part
they
of
come from, no, it doesn't come. But yeah, there's no question. The brother didn't do things to Joseph just because they were evil people, obviously. Everything was calculated from a holy point of view.
Everything has a purpose, Rabbi.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying that's why we see these bizarre things.
Okay.
That explains why every time Mashiach's Neshama comes for the most bizarre relationship. It's because of that. Because Klippa sometimes has a hold on these people. And that's why the Alter Rebbe is saying over here, he says it in the brackets. It's not the main part of the chapter. What he's saying is that certain souls look very simple.
So we can
And certain souls are very holy. And you never know where they come from. Who has a holy soul and who doesn't. That we don't know.
Only
You can
God.
see a negative person, a sinful person. You don't know what kind of neshama he has. By the way, that's another very important lesson in life. You see a negative person, a person that's not Jewish, not behaving like he should. You never know what kind of soul he has. He may have a soul from Chachma Datzilis. It's just in a terrible exile in this body, which is being sinful. That's where Klippa sent it down. You know what kind of advantage you have if you turn that person around and you get him to do a mitzvah? You can do tremendous things. So you never know who has what soul. It's not for you to decide, oh, he's a negative person, leave him alone. You can't say that. So I think we should take a break over here, and we'll be back next Sunday for the remainder of chapter 18. We'll finish next week. Any questions?
A lot of them.
Okay, I'm here.
Rabbi, every Jew that he has two neshama, the godly soul,
Yeah, the Klippa soul.
the klippus.
The Klippa soul doesn't come from the 10 spheres of
goes through
Atzil.
all those four walls.
Yeah.
So people that are not Jewish and they have only one neshama.
Yeah, a human soul. Most people have one soul. How many souls do you need? The unique thing of the Jewish people, the chosen people, is that the God gave them a second soul.
So if in they decided to convert, to be Jewish.
They get the second soul when they convert. That's what
But
happens.
you
That's
don't
what
get it
conversion
when you
is.
was born?
No.
Oh, I see.
You get it when you convert. That's what conversion is. When you get your second in the Yiddish and the Neshama. It's not dependent on your mother.
The godly soul.
You don't get it from your mother. You get it from God. God said any Jew is going to get it automatically because of the greatness of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's what we're learning here. Because of their tremendous divine, they made every one of their descendants get it. Someone that doesn't come from a Jew can get it later when he converts.
Where does the knowledge
That's
come
why,
from?
by the way,
more
I just want to answer you something. Say something. A lot of people see the Jewish concept of the chosen people as a racist idea. If you want to, what is it? You're special and you're chosen. Sounds like a racist idea. You know why it's not? It's nothing to do with race. Every person can be Jewish. No one's out of this. You can be a Hindu. You can be a whoever.
You just have to
You're
choose.
black, white. You just have to choose it. It's available for everyone. Anyone can convert. This is not a race thing. This is not a color thing. It's not a creed thing. This is from God. Anyone can be Jewish.
So why don't we, as in other religions, go after conversion as Judaism?
Because it's not the job of everyone to be Jewish. It's not. This is not what God wanted. That everyone you should have 5 billion. He doesn't. That's not the mission. The mission of every person is his thing. A Jew is a Jew, and a non-Jew is a non-Jew. You want to become Jewish, sure. But it's not necessary. You don't have to. You can be a perfectly good person being a Gentile. That's the beauty of the Torah. That it says that you don't have to be a Jew to be in heaven, to go to heaven.
The problem here is that if we assign a unitary soul to all non-Jews.
What's a unitary soul?
Just the animal soul or the
Human
soul.
soul,
whatever you
yeah.
like. Human soul. Now we've discussed in the past what the function of our animal or human soul is, and that's to vitalize our bodies.
Body to live.
To live. And in pursuit of those life functions, the aim of the animal or human soul is me 24/7. Right? Yep. It's only drives that we have in order to exist. Hunger.
Not animal
reproduction.
drives. Self-centered drives. Let's
Fine.
call it that way.
Let's self-centered drives. However, there are Gentile people.
Well, good people.
Not
I'd say most are.
let's leave good out of this. But there are Gentile people who are selfless to some degree,
Right.
and they're not id or me alone 24/7. They have to have an element.
Right, so we spoke
they have
about
to have
this
an
one.
element of divinity in them as well. Otherwise, they wouldn't behave in that
They're from
manner.
Klippas Nega. That's what we said. There's certain souls within the Klippa souls, that human soul. Some come from the totally unholy realm.
Mm-hmm.
Some come from the translucent Klippa, which have a certain divine shine. A shine of divinity can come through. That's what it means. It's translucent.
So for Gentiles, there is a duality in their souls.
Not
as
a
well.
duality. No, it's not a duality. If it comes from Klippas Nega, that's what it is. It's not a duality. It's Klippas Nega. It's the translucent soul. It could allow for godliness to shine through. Oh, you mean that it has choice? It could be this and it could be that,
Yeah.
of course.
So, okay. Not only Jews.
No, in other words, a Yitz Klipas Nega is, in other words, let's talk about that for a minute. What does it mean that a person can be selfless? How do you become selfless?
It's a very good question.
What does that mean to be selfless? Let me elaborate on this for a moment. Why does a human being choose to be a good person? That could also be selfish. Not selfish in a negative way. Selfish usually connotes, you're unto yourself and you're not into anyone else. No, that's not what I mean here. Self-centered. It means I want to be a good person. It makes me much happier to be a good person. Is that purely godly? Not necessary. That's also a little bit of self-orientation. There's a certain self-motive here. I want to be a good person because I think I'll be much happier as being a good person. So there's it's not pure, it's not transcendence. That's not transcendence.
I'm not sure that we...
Halavai, everyone was like that. Believe me, I wish we were all like that. It's not so easy to be selfless. That's what I'm saying, even for a Jew.
No question.
It's it's very unique, We'll learn in chapter 18 and 19 how every Jew has it within him to be selfless, the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. Which we'll get there. I don't want to run ahead of myself.
It doesn't bother me for Jews. It doesn't bother me. I'm interested now in Gentiles.
Yeah.
In Gentiles, to reconcile the concept that they have only a human soul.
Yeah.
Do not have a divine
The human soul can transcend.
With their actions, which are not necessarily in accordance with that.
They could transcend. Yeah, they could, but it's not so simple. For example, let's go to 80 years ago when the Holocaust was going on.
Yeah.
There were a lot of Poles, and this one, a lot, I don't know, but there were some.
There was some, yes.
That, Raoul Wallenberg, these people, they're heroic people,
Right.
who laid their life on the line to save a Jew. There were so many of them.
Right.
Not all of them, not even close, but there were some. Are you going to tell me that wasn't selfless? They were ready to give up their life for another person. That's the ultimate selfless act.
Right.
So these are people that come from Klipas Nega, that they have the ability for godliness, self-transcendence to shine through their soul. Yeah, they have that ability.
And where do we get
Again,
that?
that brings back the fact that they can't have purely a human or animal soul. It has to be.
It's a human soul.
But their human soul should not want that.
The human soul should not want it. It's only because they come from Klipas Nega. To come from Klipas Nega is meaning primarily their Klipa. Meaning the self, it's about themselves, not about God. The humans live on a general, the rule is that we're thinking about ourselves. The fact that we can transcend ourselves and totally go out of our own self-centered attitudes is a unique thing. It's not the norm. Even when you're doing good deeds, it's not always transcendence.
No,
Most people are doing good deeds because they want to be happy, doing good things. They want to have a better life, doing good things. They understand that life is not just about my money and my self-centered thing. To help someone else, it'll make me happier. When you help someone, you're not happy. It makes you happy. It makes you feel good. It's also a certain self. So not always is it transcendence. But there were people that transcended themselves. In chapter 28, he talks about this very interestingly. We'll get there one day, but it's very interesting. How he talks about the difference between a Yid and the selflessness of a Yid and the other.
Mm-hmm. Where do we get the knowledge of Klipa and how it has the ability to control what souls come down?
It says in the Torah, it says it in the Kabbalah, in the Zohar, it talks about it.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, the Klipa has to exist in order for the world to produce what God wants. Like I said, it has to have a balance between you. So by definition, there must be Klipa. How does Klipa live? The source of life is only God, only the holy side. So they have to nurture. They have to suck off the holy side for their nurture. They have to nurse from God, so to say. And they get it for free. God gives it to them without, usually God says, you do good, you get. You don't, Klipa gets it without work. It's like parasites. They do it, they get it without work. Because God wants them to exist. So He releases to them certain amount of godly energy through souls, through other methods. Sometimes souls is the greatest source of godly energy. So He releases to them sometimes loftier souls so that they have more, so that they can, because when there's more good, there has to be more, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know how exactly the measure goes, but God does have to release to them sometimes souls and sources of godly energy for free. They take advantage of it. They want more. The more they have, the stronger they are, and the longer they exist. In other words, the more sinfulness goes on in this world, the slower, the more Mashiach is pushed off, the more they have, the more they exist. So they're looking for unholiness to thrive. Let's put it this way. And they're looking for unholiness to thrive through a holy soul. Because that means that they kidnap the holy soul into their domain for a long time. So God does that. He needs to give them holiness because He needs them in existence. And He gives them that control. And this explains a lot of the stories of the Torah, as I said before. Because otherwise, none of it, that stuff doesn't make sense. How is it that Mashiach? So you ask me, where's the source of this? It's in the Torah itself. It's in the Zohar and in the Kabbalah, and it's very, 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 very elaborative over there. Because I guess the premise, the premise is that nothing can exist on its own. That the source of life is only holiness, is God. So there has to be some godliness in the side of Klippa to keep them in existence. So how is that process? God releases to them holy energy through souls, which is the greatest source of energy, because we come from the highest level.
But you say it comes from the back. Doesn't come
To
from
them, oh, you're right. They get it from the back. They don't get the inner dimension of godliness. She brings up a good point. There's the back-to-back and the face-to-face. Yeah.
And the knowledge of Atzilut?
This is also all in Kabbalah. This is all Kabbalah.
Ruth. Your people will be my people. Referring to Ruth, the minute she accepted from Noemi, your people will be my people. Your
God
will
is
be
my
people.
God, yeah.
The moment you accept God, the Almighty, the God of Abraham, as your God, and you conform,
That's
you have
right.
potential to change.
That's right, exactly
That was
right.
the way.
Then again, about what you say as to some of the Gentiles. Like,
Let me just finish this officially. I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll continue off camera.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good week.
Mhm.